What's going on? Join me on a journey to the Tarantula Coast to a dance of Deathclaw and dragons as the most popular race from Warhammer 1 and the most popular race from Warhammer 2 battle it out in the jungles of the New World. And this is a really interesting matchup because the High Elves and the Empire are the quintessential combined arms races. When microed efficiently, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. They are beautiful to watch, but if one piece lags behind, if one component isn't microed very well, their foundation can quickly crumble beneath them, which means they can be tougher to play than a lot of other factions. But thankfully, don't have to worry about that because we have two more than capable players from XMT. Namru, commanding the Empire, and Falcon, commanding the High Elves. And for the Empire, his name is Karl Franz. They will obey, riding Deathclaw the Imperial Griffon. No Foeseeker or Galmaraz this game, going for a bit of a budget version of the Emperor, but still potent with Blood Roar and the Reiksguard Runefang. Surprised not to see Galmaraz. That bonus for large would be a big help in an aerial duel, but he should be able to afford more support now. So we got Zintler's Reiksguard and some 3 Chevron regular Reiksguard as well. They're going to be a tough nut to crack. Jade Wizard with Earthblood and Regrowth to heal up the Franz himself, and the Sunmaker, a Helstorm Rocket Battery that couldn't hit the ocean if it was pissing off the side of a boat. It can deal a lot of damage very, very quickly, but it is wildly inaccurate and pretty expensive to boot. So let's see how it does here. Around Elves, watch yourselves, especially when they're controlled by Falcon. 2 Sisters of Avelorn, a bunch of High Elf Spearmen, and already playing some mind games as the Helstorm Rocket Battery unloads. Tokyo drifting his way through the minefield at the start. If we know anything about Falcon, it's that he loves dragons. So no surprise to see a princess on a moon dragon here, supported by an Ithelmar chariot mage with Windblast and Harmonic Convergence, and a whole squadron of Silver Helms, which have a very important role to play here. Whoever wins that cav fight is going to have a big leg up, because neither side does very well with Reiksguard or Silver Helms hammering them from behind. A couple of Illyrian Reavers, Vanguard deployed. It looks like they've got their eyes set on that Sunmaker, and that will get things kicked off. Now, the Helstorm Rocket Battery would love to be shooting into those Sisters of Avelorn and maybe take some models off them early, but Falcon knows that, and he's doing an impeccable job so far of dodging these volleys as they come in. So it might be worth it for Namru to start blasting the spears instead. Just get rid of their martial prowess, make the infantry grind easier, and just get some value out of them. You can't dodge every volley if you continue to switch targets, and honestly, the way that thing fires, how quickly it fires, is kind of like a machine gun. You aren't going to be able to keep up and dodge everything. So you saw right there, as their spearmen got wrecked by that volley, and they will continue to lose their martial prowess as that thing unloads. But there's an obvious problem with the Empire deployment here. No knights on his right flank, and there's a clear avenue for Illyrian Reavers to get in unscratched, unscathed, and shut down the artillery. Quickly, Namru gonna make up for that mistake though. Reiksguard and Empire Knights will both easily beat Reavers in CQB, but I think the Elves are more than willing to let them stay in and try to finish off the Sunmaker for good. And it's silence for now, which means the infantry can move up and the Sisters of Avelorn no longer getting harassed. And they are a great equalizer when it comes to the cav fight. If they get 1 or 2 volleys, clean ones, gotta be clean, into the flank or rear of Reiksguard, Silver Helms will be able to trade upwards and maybe even win those fights, which would be a huge leg up in that mobility game. Windblast coming through, Spear's gonna feel that one in the morning, and the Empire maybe getting a bit overzealous here in their pursuit of the light cav. Textbook Fate will pull those knights out of position, and here come the Silver Helms and a pissed off Moondragon for the coup de grace. But we'll have to pay attention to that aerial fight, because with support from a life mage, even without Galmaraz, the Franz might just beat the brakes off that princess and her lizard. Going for some cav play here, charging to the back of their own troops. Still not a fan of that. I don't have an issue with players doing it. It's in the game. I don't think it's particularly cheesy, but it shouldn't work that well. It's not going to do a massive amount of damage, but it still hurt that infantry, and it will help them win that fight. But that is textbook cavalry play right there. It does not get more gorgeous in terms of hammer and anvils. Falcon coming in with the beautiful cavalry micro and shish kebabbing, slamming those Empire spearmen from behind, or actually swordsmen, and they're going to break immediately off the impetus of that charge, and that's going to be some frontline troops for the Empire. Not feeling too good about themselves after that one. Just what the doctor ordered for the Azure. Sisters of Avelorn making their presence felt, getting some good shots into Zintler's Reiksguard as they escape through the trees, and the Empire shifting everything over to this flank, realizing how important it is to kill off these Silver Helms before they're allowed to run free in the Empire back line. And Deathclaw Gonna help out tremendously in this fight. Of course, Silver Helms are not immune to psychology, so the Imperial Griffon is gonna wreak some terrible havoc here and rip quite a few of them off their mounts and send them scurrying for the hills. But the Moondragon is still nearby, and it will probably come down to a duel between them at some point. And at the moment, I'd say the High Elves have done a better job of supporting, but more cavalry coming in, and now they're making it over to this side of the battlefield. Harmonic conversions going down on the Moondragon might allow it to trade upwards and start beating up on Deathclaw. We'll see how that fight goes. Here we go. Silver Helms are free now. Little bit of a microlapse on the cab, but he'll notice it immediately, and those spears are not braced, so they're a great target to charge in, but he's going to pull through, not go back out the way he came in, and that could be problematic for Falcon. A lot of those models are going to get hung up on those spears. They won't be knocked down for particularly long. Good Sisters of Avelorn volleys coming in. That's what I'm saying. That will allow them to trade and probably beat those Reiksguard in a 1v1. And your boy Zintler getting some Jade, loving to keep them topped off and looking healthy. Regrowth going their way will return their vigor and allow them to tank and hold for a long time, which is really what Reiksguard are all about. Powerful defensive cavalry. They can and will hold the line for ages, while Franz, well, he doesn't give a she. Honey Badger. Don't care about no dragons. He's surrounded. Reichland Runefang popped and straight pooping on that princess. Normally you have to pay double for that kind of action. Cotton, she's gonna run. Franz is on the hunt, and Falcon leaving in haste. Would be a massive swing if the Emperor could take down the High Elf Lord here. One or two more attacks might just do it, or at least send her running, and then Franz could just chase her off the map. That'd be big. But Falcon is back up into the air now, doing a bit of juking, trying to go down into Zintler's Reiksguard, and actually gonna get a breath attack off. Gonna melt the center of that Reiksguard formation. Zintler's Reiksguard will not terror out. Believe they are immune to psych, but they're gonna hold the line, even though they're getting blasted by Dragon Breaths and Sister of Avelorn volleys. And yeah, they're still gonna duke it out with these Silver Helms, and admirably sticking in that fight. Faith, steel, and gunpowder, what the Empire is all about, and proving their worth today, but not sure how long they'll be around. They are going to kill off the rest of those Silver Helms, but those Sisters of Avelorn are both full HP, and they are free, and I think Namru going to have to pull some state troops off to go tie them down. That's what he's going to do. Azure Spearmen holding, but there are Unbreakable Swordsmen in the mix there, and I don't think the Azure Spears will be able to hold for too much longer. They are losing the infantry grind. But the Sisters got some really good shots into Karl Franz as he flew away on Deathclaw. Regrowth might be able to get him topped off, but yeah, looks like the High Elf Spearmen are breaking. And that could be a big issue for Falcon, because he's lost the majority of his infantry, which means keeping the Sisters alive, or at least untouched, will be pretty challenging. And I cannot believe Zintler's Reiksguard are still duking it out with those Silver Helms. They have just been a bastion, a citadel for Sigmar, but it looks like the end is nigh. A rear charge, a hammer and anvil will put the nail in the coffin for them, but a round of applause for those Zintler's Reiksguard. They were super impressive in a pretty bleak situation for a long time there. So awesome to see that. Karl Franz giving chase to the Moondragon. This is where he would love to have Foe Seeker. That extra 24% speed, that extra charge speed as well, would be so useful in closing the gap here and getting on top of that Moondragon, because it's only 1 or 2 attacks into his rear, and that princess would be off the field. That dragon cannot take on Deathclaw at this point, and honestly, if they were at full HP, I'm not sure he would have been able to anyway. So, again, trying to juke it out, actually creating some space with those jukes, and the Sisters of Avelorn unleashing their rainbow sparkles into the midst of the Empire state troops. And this is one of the things that really sets Sisters of Avelorn apart from the majority of archers in the game. Even Way Watchers would probably start dying in droves in that kind of engagement. Even against Empire Spearmen, they're not very tanky. Sisters of Avelorn are legitimately tanky. They have very high melee defense, and against beaten up Empire Spearmen, they're going to be able to last a long time, except for when Empire Knights get a hammer and anvil off, and even then, their HP bar actually barely went down there. I mean, they're going to take some damage for sure, but they're going to hold out for a while, and meanwhile, more Empire state troops going for a ride. Both sides unleashing the cavalry micro. We've seen some great cav play this game from both the Empire and the High Elves, and it is always a glorious sight to behold to watch as Empire Spearmen go flying across the horizon, and the Silver Helms will take that opportunity to close in and finish off these Empire Knights. And on the ground floor, High Elves are certainly looking strong on this side, but the balance bar is dead even, and Deathclaw could cause some serious terror route issues as we get into the late stages of the game. Falcon noticing he's landed though, and I think we're about to get a breath attack, and here comes the volcano from on high. Look at that HP plummet. It was at 2,400, went down by more than 1,000, and immediately that bounce bar gonna swing in the High Elves' favor. But this is still not a fight the Moondragon can win. Deathclaw still has the support of healing, maybe 1 or 2 more Earthbloods, certainly no more regrowths. I believe 2 have already been used this game. Don't think that Mage will have enough wins to match to do any more of that. But the Moondragon is running, Deathclaw is still alive, and he is a terror. The cavalry is severely beaten up at this point. If Deathclaw can disengage, kill the Ithamar Chariot, and then go after the Moondragon, he could absolutely carry this game. And Franz is a beast. But man, he would love to have Gal Moraz right now. That plus 16 bonus for large would be so useful. And God, that Wind Blast Falcon is so damn good at that. Wow, Sigmar Sons unbreakable. They had a lot of HP left and the Wind Blast hit, and then they didn't. Alright, so I'd say the High Elves have the advantage here, but going for that strike on the Lord. Sisters of Avelorn using their guard mode to ignore the annoying Jade Wizard that's trying to tie them down. Getting a couple good shots into Franz. He's going to dodge 1 full volley. That was fantastic because he needed to. If he takes a full volley here from Sisters, this is over. Going in, and friendly fire, maybe not so friendly fire, taking out Falcon's Lord. That was hilarious. I'm not sure I've ever seen that before. The dragon just gets completely decimated by his own sisters. And there we go. The princess is off the map. She's dead. But Franz is looking worse for the wear as he routes. The mage is about to break, and that's going to be army losses. High Elves take the field. And it all came down to that breath attack when Karl Franz got in there. And this is why I think either Galmoraz or Foeseeker would have been a worthy investment in this fight. It might have just been enough to kill that dragon off sooner. And think about if Franz had 1,200 more HP going into those last rounds of engagements. He would have been more than enough to finish off what remained of the High Elf roster. Now, the Sisters would have still been an issue, but he had some free state troops, and he had some other stuff to go tie them down. I think alongside his infantry, Deathclaw would have been too much for what remained of the High Elf roster. But that gorgeous breath attack from Falcon completely changed the complexion of that battle, and it all arose from his patience, which I think is one of the attributes that really sets him apart from a lot of other players. He is so cerebral and realizes that any small window can appear at any moment, and when it does, he jumps on it and just drops that hammer and finishes the game right then and there. He was running for 5, 6, 7 minutes, and a lot of other players probably would have dove in, tried to cause some terror routes, but if they land, then there's a good chance the Moondragon just ends up dying much earlier and can't make that breath attack happen. But he waited. He bides his time, waits for that right moment, and then gets a full breath attack, vertical one, right on top of Deathclaw, deals easily like 1,300 damage, and that was probably the difference maker in that battle. So super well played and a fantastic way to demonstrate the virtue of patience. And I loved watching the cavalry micro back and forth that game. Both players used their cavalry incredibly well. There were a couple mistakes here or there that were tiny, but in the scheme of things, I'd say both were used pretty admirably, and Namru did a great job with Franz, just harassing that dragon all game long, keeping him in the fight when he needed to stay in, giving chase when he needed to give chase. Just needed a Foeseeker or something with a little bit more burst of speed, or Galmoraz for that plus 16 bonus versus large, and I think either one of those items might have been enough. Just drop like 1 or 2, a couple chevrons on those swordsmen maybe, and it might have been enough for him to take that game if the dragon goes down sooner before he gets that breath attack off. And obviously, letting your Sunmaker get charged, not ideal either, but really good game to both players, super enjoyable, and I'll see you all in the next one.